The lace scratched against my cheek as I pressed myself into the corner of the fitting room, one hand clamped over my own mouth, the other gripping a rack of wedding gowns so hard the hangers rattled. 30 seconds earlier, Marta, the shop owner, a woman I'd known for 11 years, had grabbed my wrist so tight I still had the marks the next morning and pulled me behind the curtain. "Hide in the fitting room," she'd whispered, her eyes wide, her voice barely more than breath. "You need to hear this. And Eleanor, don't make a sound." I didn't know what this was yet. I only knew that on the other side of a thin velvet curtain, 3 feet away, my daughter was laughing about something. And the laugh had a shape to it I didn't recognize. Cold and satisfied. I held my breath and listened. "My name is Eleanor Voss. I was 56 years old that spring, and I had spent 29 years building something out of nothing. I started Voss Capital Advisory in a spare bedroom with $1,100 and a used fax machine, back when my daughter Claire was 2 and her father had already decided fatherhood wasn't for him. I raised her alone. I built the firm one small client at a time. A dentist here, a widow there, a family trying to save for a house. Until, 29 years later, I sold my client book and my name to a regional firm for $6.3 million. I didn't do it for the money, not really. I did it so I could finally slow down. Watch my daughter get married. Maybe, for once, just enjoy something I'd earned instead of calculating it. Claire was 27, marrying a man named Tyler Bregman, whose family ran Bregman Construction, a mid-sized firm his mother, Vivian, had taken over after her husband passed. I liked Tyler well enough. I loved my daughter completely. I had also, 3 weeks before the wedding, quietly wired $185,000 to cover the venue, the catering, and, at Vivian's gentle insistence, a little cushion. Eleanor, weddings always run over. I didn't think anything of it. That's the thing about trust. You don't feel it leaving the room until you're standing in a fitting room with your hand over your mouth, listening to your daughter's voice on the other side of a curtain. She already signed the check for the venue, Claire was saying, and I recognized the tone, the one she used to use in high school, right before she asked to borrow the car. She'll sign the house thing too. She just needs it framed right. That's what I keep telling Tyler. Vivian's voice was silk over gravel. The voice of a woman who'd spent 40 years getting exactly what she wanted from men twice her size. Older women like your mother, they want to feel needed. You don't ask her for the lake house. You tell her it's a gift to the marriage. A blessing. She'll cry, she'll sign, and by the time anyone reads the fine print, we're 3 states away closing on the Sarasota property. I felt my knees go loose. The lake house. My mother's lake house. The one piece of property that had nothing to do with the firm, nothing to do with money I'd made. The one thing that was just mine, passed down, paid off, untouchable. She's not going to just sign a deed transfer, Claire said, and for 1/2 second. 1/2 second I would replay for months. I thought I heard hesitation in her voice. Vivian laughed, low and pleased with herself. "Sweetheart, we're not calling it a deed transfer. We're calling it an estate optimization gift. Your mother built a whole career convincing scared people to trust paperwork they didn't understand. It's almost poetic, don't you think, doing it to her?" I did not make a sound. I stood very still, the taffeta of some other bride's gown against my spine, and I understood, with the particular clarity that only betrayal gives you, that the ground I thought I was standing on had never really been there. I didn't confront anyone that day. I went home, poured a single glass of wine I didn't drink, and opened the old red leather ledger I'd carried since 1997, the one I used to track every client relationship by hand, long after everything else went digital. I wrote down the date. I wrote down every word I could remember Vivian saying. Then I called an old colleague, a forensic accountant named Priya Nair, and asked her to quietly pull whatever public records existed on Bregman Construction. What came back 3 days later was a company $41,000 behind on 2 supplier accounts, with a lien filed against their equipment yard and a line of credit maxed out since February. I found the document by accident, or what I let myself believe was an accident. Claire had left her laptop open on my kitchen counter while she went to the bathroom, and a file titled gift_language_final_v3 to docs was sitting in her downloads folder. It wasn't a deed. It was worse, a power of attorney addendum, granting Tyler and Vivian joint decision authority over any real property held in trust for the benefit of the Voss Bregman family, with a signature line at the bottom. My signature. Traced, not signed. I could tell by the tremor in the E. I asked Claire about it directly, over coffee, keeping my voice light. Sweetheart, what's this power of attorney thing Vivian mentioned? Claire didn't even flinch. Oh, that's just standard estate optimization, Mom. Tyler's family attorney does it for every merger of assets. It protects everyone. It streamlines the trust structure so there's no probate delay if something happens. She said probate delay like she'd rehearsed it. She probably had. I smiled and told her that made sense. I told her I trusted her. I did not trust her. I trusted the version of her I'd raised, and I was starting to understand those were not the same person anymore. I let 2 weeks pass, playing the doting mother, before I asked Priya to dig further. What she found made my stomach drop in a way the first 2 discoveries hadn't. Vivian Bregman had done this before. 3 years earlier, Tyler's older brother had been engaged to a woman named Renata Colon, whose late father had left her a small apartment building in Queens. The engagement ended 8 weeks before the wedding. Right around the time a similar estate optimization document surfaced in a since-deleted family group chat that Priya's contacts still had a screenshot of. Renata got out. The lake house of my family was not going to be her only target. It was a pattern. The final piece came the way the first one had, by accident, hiding where I wasn't supposed to be. I'd gone back to Marta's shop for the final dress fitting, and Marta, bless her, had started leaving the shop's back office door cracked whenever Vivian came in. Just in case, she said, without elaborating. I stood behind that door and listened to Vivian tell Tyler, once the deeds transferred, we list the lake property within the month. Eleanor's sentimental, but she's not going to sue her own daughter over a piece of paper. And even if she wanted to, by the time her lawyer got a hearing date, we'd already be closed on Sarasota. Tyler laughed. God, she really has no idea, does she? Sweet old thing. Sweet old thing. I stood behind that door for a long time after they left the room. Here is the decision I made. Standing in Marta's back hallway with my heart going like a hammer, I was not going to be sweet. But I was absolutely going to let them think I was. I had spent 29 years learning that the most dangerous person in any negotiation is the one everyone else has already decided to underestimate. So I decided to become her. I started small. I began asking Claire the same question twice in one phone call. Did you say the seating chart was Thursday, or was that the tasting? And letting a beat too long pass before I remembered the answer. I started wearing my reading glasses on a chain even when I didn't need them, patting my purse for them while they sat, visibly, on the chain around my neck. I let my hand tremble, just slightly, when I signed the caterer's final invoice, and I saw Vivian watch it happen with something that looked almost like tenderness. Pity, dressed up as warmth. In my head, the whole time, I was running numbers, dates, names. Outwardly, I was becoming smaller, softer, slower. A woman who might, plausibly, sign whatever was placed gently in front of her while someone held her hand and told her it was for the family. It is a strange kind of power, being underestimated on purpose. You feel every insult land and choose, deliberately, not to bleed. I called Priya again, and then I called someone else, a retired detective named Marcus I.B., who'd handled elder fraud cases for the county before retiring into private consulting. Between the 3 of us, we built the bait. I had my actual attorney, a sharp, quiet woman named Fatima Rashid who'd handled my firm's contracts for a decade, draft a real amended trust document, one that appeared to add a new asset to my estate, a fictitious offshore holding account, seeded with just enough fake documentation to look plausible to someone in a hurry. I accidentally left a printed summary of it on my kitchen counter the next time Claire came by, face down, half tucked under a grocery list, exactly where a curious person would find it if they were looking. Then I asked Marta for one more favor. I need a hidden camera in the fitting room, I told her. The one with the good light. And I need you to seat Vivian there for the final alterations, alone, the day before the rehearsal dinner. Marta didn't ask why. She just nodded and said, I've hated that woman since the first time she called my seamstress to help. The day before the rehearsal dinner, I sat in my car outside the shop with my phone in my lap, the live feed from that camera glowing on the screen, and I watched Vivian pick up the folder Fatima had left in plain view on the fitting room table, the one about the offshore account, photographed 3 pages of it with her phone, and muttered to herself, "Oh, there's more than I thought," before slipping it back exactly where she found it. My phone buzzed once against my knee. A text from Fatima. She just called her attorney. Recording confirms bait was taken. I sat there a long moment, watching the screen go dark, and felt something in my chest settle, finally, into place. The rehearsal dinner was held in the private room at a restaurant called Amaranth. 42 guests, white tablecloths, candlelight, the kind of room where nobody expects a scene. Vivian stood for a toast around 8:30, champagne glass raised, and worked her way, with practiced warmth, toward what I now understood was the actual point of the evening. "And of course," she said, smiling at me down the length of the table, "we're so grateful to Eleanor, who's been so generous with this family. In fact, Eleanor, darling, I had Tyler's attorney draw up something sweet, a little symbolic gesture, formalizing the lake house as a wedding gift to Claire and Tyler. I thought maybe tonight, in front of everyone who loves you, might be a beautiful moment to sign it." She actually produced the folder. At a rehearsal dinner, in front of 42 witnesses. "She just needs a pen," Tyler said, laughing, to the table at large. "Mom, she'll probably ask what she's signing twice and forget by dessert." A few uncomfortable titters. Claire's smile had gone thin and fixed. I stood up. Slowly. I did not raise my voice. "I'd love to sign something tonight," I said, and I watched Vivian's face open like a door. "But first, I think everyone should hear what you told your son about my sentimentality and my lawyer's hearing dates in the back office of Whitfield and Grace Bridal 3 weeks ago." The room went very quiet. I set my phone on the table and played 11 seconds of audio. "Once the deeds transferred, we list the lake property within the month. By the time her lawyer got a hearing date, we'd already be closed on Sarasota." Then I played Tyler's laugh. "God, she really has no idea, does she? Sweet old thing." Vivian's champagne glass had stopped halfway to her mouth. 3 years ago, I continued, calm, quiet, each sentence landing like a stone set carefully in place. "A woman named Renata Colon was engaged to your older son. She owned an apartment building her father left her. That engagement ended 8 weeks before the wedding, right around the time a document very similar to the one in your hand tonight appeared in a family group chat. I have a screenshot. I have a forensic accountant. I have a retired detective who specializes in exactly this kind of elder financial fraud, and he's sitting at table 6. By the way, Marcus, would you like to say hello?" A gray-haired man near the back raised 2 fingers in a small wave. "And this," I said, finally reaching for the folder Vivian was still frozen holding, "isn't a wedding gift. It's a power of attorney addendum with a forged signature. Mine. Traced, not signed. You can see the tremor if you look closely." I took the folder from her hand. She didn't resist. I don't think she could move. I tore it once, cleanly, down the middle, and set both halves on the table beside her untouched champagne. "I also left a folder on my kitchen counter 2 weeks ago," I added, describing an offshore holding account that does not exist. "You photographed it in the fitting room yesterday at 2:47 in the afternoon. I have that on camera too." 2 men in plain clothes who had been quietly seated near the exit for the last hour stood up. One of them was already reaching for a badge. "Vivian Bregman," the taller one said, "we'd like to ask you some questions about a fraud complaint filed by Renata Colon's family and about an attempted forgery." Vivian Bregman was arrested that night on an outstanding warrant tied to the Colon family's complaint, which, once my evidence was added, expanded into a formal elder financial exploitation and forgery investigation. She pled to reduced charges 11 months later and paid restitution to 2 families, mine and the Colons. She lost her position at Bregman Construction, which was sold off in pieces within the year. Tyler Bregman was never criminally charged. There wasn't proof he'd known about the forgery itself, only the plan around it. But the recordings did what a courtroom couldn't. Claire ended the engagement 4 days after the rehearsal dinner. Tyler's contracting license came under review after 2 more clients came forward about billing irregularities his mother had helped orchestrate. Last I heard, he was working for someone else's company, in another state, under considerably less impressive circumstances. Claire, my daughter, I did not walk away from, though I understood if the world expected me to. She had been dazzled and flattered and slowly walked into complicity by a woman twice her age who was very, very good at making bad things sound like love. She came to me the morning after the dinner, sat on my kitchen floor because she said she didn't deserve the chair, and cried in a way I hadn't seen since she was 9 years old and had broken her grandmother's china. I didn't rush to forgive her, but I didn't slam the door either. We are still rebuilding, slowly, with more honesty between us than we've ever had. And Marta, who'd grabbed my wrist and hidden me behind a curtain, who'd cracked open an office door on nothing but instinct and decency. I quietly paid off the small business loan on her shop the following spring. No ceremony, just a note that said, for hiding me when it mattered. Every bride deserves a shop owner like you. She cried when she called me. I told her the pearls on my mother's old brooch, the one I wore that whole terrible spring, had never once come off. Some things you hold on to because they were earned honestly, and you make sure the people who help you keep theirs too. It was raining. 6 weeks later, the night Vivian Bregman showed up at my door. I almost didn't recognize her. No pearls, no silk, no confidence, just a woman in a wet coat, standing on my porch in the dark, asking if she could just talk, just for a minute. Eleanor, please, I have nowhere else. I stood in the doorway with the porch light on her face, and I felt, for exactly 1 second, the old reflex, the instinct to open the door, to offer tea, to smooth things over the way I'd smoothed over everything for 29 years. Then I remembered the fitting room, the lace against my cheek. Sweet old thing. You had every chance to be honest with me, I said, and you chose forgery instead. I hope you find whatever you're looking for. It isn't going to be behind this door. I closed it, gently. No slam, no satisfaction in it, just the quiet click of a lock I had every right to turn. My longtime friend and business partner, Frank Delgado, was in the kitchen when I came back in, pouring 2 glasses of the good red we'd been saving for no particular reason. He didn't ask what she'd wanted. He just handed me a glass and said, "You did the arithmetic on that one a long time ago, Ellie. Nothing left to carry." I sat down across from him, and for the first time in months, the number in my head, the one I'd been running since a fitting room 3 weeks before a wedding that never happened, finally came out even. Here's what that spring taught me. The people most likely to underestimate you are usually the ones who need you to stay small so they can help themselves to what you built. Let them believe what they need to believe, and keep your own ledger anyway. Have you ever had to play weak to protect what you'd earned? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. If this story hit home, hit like, subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.